All right, so let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into the Christmas Chronicles
From 2018.
from 2018. Yeah. You know the one where Kurt Russell kind of throws on the big red suit
Right.
and gives Santa a bit of an edge. I'm excited to unpack this one because it's, on the surface, it's a fun family Christmas movie, but there's a lot more going on.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, it's got that classic Christmas movie charm, but it also has some really interesting themes, grief and belief and family dynamics wrapped up in a pretty thrilling adventure.
Exactly. And you've got Kurt Russell as Santa. I
Come
mean,
on.
come on. That's got to be a win.
Casting gold.
Casting gold right there. But I think what makes this film so interesting is that it takes some risks. Like,
Yeah.
imagine pitching this, the Santa crashes, his sleigh gets arrested, and then has to break out of jail with the help of a couple kids.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like your typical Hallmark Christmas movie.
Definitely not a Hallmark movie,
Whoa.
but it's refreshing. And again, Kurt Russell.
That's a slightly jaded blues playing Santa.
I mean, what do you think about his portrayal of Santa? Did it feel like it honored the kind of traditional Santa while also giving us something new?
Yeah, I think he struck a really fantastic balance. He still has that twinkle in his eye, the kindness and generosity that we associate with Santa. But he's also got this, like, world weariness,
Yeah.
this frustration with how cynical the world has become. He's not just jolly old Saint Nick's, He's
Yeah.
got some depth to him.
It's like the film is saying that Santa's kind of burned out from dealing with the lack of belief in the world.
Right.
And that's something I think a lot of people can relate to, especially around the holidays. That feeling of trying to hold on to that childlike wonder when, things are tough.
Right, and it's not just Santa that's dealing with that. The Pierce family, our main characters, are going through their own struggles. They
Yeah.
just lost their father, and they're each coping with that in very different ways. You've got the mom, Claire, she's desperately trying to keep things together, and then Teddy, the older brother, he's kind of acting out, getting in trouble.
He's lashing out.
And then you've got Kate, the younger sister, who's really clinging to her belief in Santa as a way to kind of hold on to some hope.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with how the film tackled the idea of grief, especially during the holidays.
Yeah.
It didn't shy away from the pain or those messy emotions,
Yeah.
but it also showed how important it is to find those moments of joy and connection,
Yeah.
even amidst the sadness.
It's a really sensitive and I think really powerful portrayal, and I think it's one of the film's strengths. It allows for a more nuanced understanding of what Christmas spirit actually is.
Yeah.
It's not just about presents and decorations, it's about finding that light in the darkness and coming together as a family even when things are tough.
And it's within this, already kind of complicated family dynamic that we get this wild Christmas adventure. I mean, Kate is setting up a camera, trying to capture Santa on film. Teddy's out doing who knows what, and their mom is working a double shift at the hospital. I mean, it feels like the perfect recipe for some Christmas chaos.
Oh, yeah.
And boy, does it deliver.
And then we get this just like fantastic scene where Santa crashes the sleigh in Chicago.
Yes.
It's so unexpected and visually stunning, and it really sets the stage for like the rest of the film.
It's a turning point, I think, for sure. It's like, okay, this isn't your average heartwarming Christmas story.
Right.
Things are about to get real, and I love that they kind of lean into this absurdity of it all.
I agree with you. And I have to say the way they incorporated Chicago into the story was brilliant.
Yes.
It gave the film this really unique energy and visual flair.
I felt like the city itself almost became like a character in the film,
Yeah,
especially all those Chicago landmarks that they featured.
for sure. It's not just a backdrop. It's really part of the story.
Yeah. And speaking of the story, I thought the way they handled Santa's powers was really kind of fascinating.
Uh-huh.
Like his hat, for instance.
Yeah.
It's more than just a fashion accessory.
Yeah, it's like a symbol of his authority.
Yeah.
When he loses it, he becomes almost vulnerable and human.
You're right. The loss of the hat isn't just a plot device. It's a symbol of his weakened state, both literally and kind of metaphorically. It's like the film is saying, even Santa needs a little help sometimes. Even Santa can feel lost.
Right, and it's that vulnerability, that need for connection that ultimately leads him to rely on the kids, Teddy and Kate, and that, of course, sets up this whole, central dynamic of the film, this unlikely trio on this crazy Christmas Eve adventure.
And that brings us to their wild ride through Chicago, which is just pure entertainment.
Yeah.
We've got car chases, outsmarting cops. There's that hilarious scene in the bar where he's trying to rally up some help by tapping into everyone's Christmas memories.
Yes.
It's like a reminder that we all have a little Christmas magic in us somewhere.
It's such a great scene. He's not preaching or trying to convert anyone. He's just reminding them of that feeling, that sense of wonder that we all associate with Christmas. It's very subtle, but it's a very effective way of reinforcing that message of belief.
And it's not just the adults that need that reminder, right?
Right.
Teddy especially is going through a lot. He's carrying so much grief and anger, and he's pushing away from his family, from anything that reminds him of his dad.
Yeah, he's lost and he's looking for a way to connect, but he's so afraid of being hurt again. He represents that cynicism that Santa's fighting against, that sense that the magic of Christmas is just a childish fantasy, but underneath it all, there's still that flicker of hope, that longing for something to believe in.
And I was so impressed with Judah Lewis's performance, by the way.
Yeah.
He brought so much depth to Teddy. You could really feel his pain, his anger, but also that underlying vulnerability.
Oh, he was phenomenal. And his chemistry with Darby Camp, who plays Kate, was fantastic. They had this great sibling dynamic, that mix of annoyance and love that just felt so authentic.
Yeah, it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
They bicker and they fight like real siblings do, but you can tell they really care about each other.
And that's what this film is about, right?
Yeah.
It's about family and coming together and finding that connection even when it seems impossible.
So we've got Santa on the run. We've got the kids along for the ride. Christmas spirit is hanging in the balance.
Stakes are high.
What happens next?
Well, let's just say things get a little more complicated when Santa ends up in jail. And that's where things get really interesting. So we left off with Santa behind bars.
Oh, yeah.
It's a classic setup, right? The ultimate symbol of joy and generosity locked up in this, cold, cynical jail cell.
Right.
But of course, this is the Christmas Chronicles, so it's not going to be some straightforward jailbreak story.
Right.
And he uses his wit and his charm and a little bit of Christmas magic to try and convince the police that he's the real deal.
I mean, this is Kurt Russell as Santa.
Exactly.
It's not just going to sit there and take it.
No, he does not. We get this great scene with Officer Pavenda,
Yes.
played brilliantly by Martin Roach, who is this wonderfully skeptical cop. I mean, no matter what Santa does, Pavenda just refuses to believe.
It's a great dynamic.
It
You've got Santa, who's so used to being, adored and believed in, suddenly faced with this guy who just thinks he's a crazy old man in a suit.
In a costume.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real test of his character and his faith in humanity.
And it's not just Pavenda who represents that skepticism.
Right.
Teddy's starting to come around, but he's still struggling to believe that he's on this adventure with Santa Claus.
Right. Teddy's been hurt. He's lost faith in a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's not easy to just flip a switch and believe in Santa again.
It's got to be earned.
It does.
Okay, but let's talk about the real highlight of Santa's jailhouse. Escapade, the musical number.
Oh, yeah.
Santa Claus is back in town.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just pure energy.
Yeah.
It's such a joyful performance. It's like he's reclaiming his power.
Yes.
Reminding everyone of the magic of Christmas.
It's pure cinematic magic. Kurt Russell just kills it. He's got the moves, he's got the voice, he's got the charisma. And the way that he rallies those other inmates, turning the jail into this giant Christmas party, it's infectious.
It is. And it's so fun. And it actually convinces Officer Pavenda. He sees the belief in everyone's eyes, that pure joy that Santa's bringing. And finally, he starts to question his own skepticism.
It's a beautiful moment of transformation.
It is.
And I think it highlights one of the core themes of this movie. Belief is contagious. When we see other people, experiencing joy, when we feel that sense of wonder, it's hard not to be swept up in it ourselves.
It's a reminder that even the most cynical among us can be touched by a little Christmas magic.
Absolutely. And it's not just Pavenda who experiences this shift. Teddy sees Santa in a new light. He sees him as this fighter, someone who's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in, even when the odds are stacked against him.
So Santa breaks out of jail.
Right.
He convinces a skeptic and reignites the Christmas spirit in a room full of inmates.
He does.
What's next on this Christmas Eve adventure?
Well, now it's a race against time.
Okay.
Santa's got to deliver those presents before sunrise, and he's still missing his hat, his reindeer, and a whole lot of Christmas magic. This is where the film really shifts gears and becomes a full-blown, action-adventure spectacle.
And it's awesome. I mean, we've got Santa and the kids flying through the night sky in this makeshift sleigh, dodging obstacles, spreading Christmas cheer wherever they go. It's just pure visual delight.
It is.
And I especially love that scene where Teddy gets to drive the sleigh.
Oh, it's great.
You can see the pure joy and wonder on his face. It's like he's finally letting go of all that grief and embracing the magic of the moment.
It's a real turning point for him. He realizes that, holding on to all that anger and pain, isn't honoring his father's memory. It's actually preventing him from experiencing the joy that his dad would have wanted him to have. And in that moment, flying through the sky with Santa, he finally allows himself to feel that joy again.
And Kate, she's throwing those presents out like a pro.
Oh, she's great.
She is full of energy and enthusiasm.
She's the heart of the film, really.
Yes.
Her unwavering belief in Santa is what drives the story forward.
Yes.
She reminds everyone, including Santa himself, how important it is to hold on to that childlike wonder. That sense of possibility.
And speaking of wonder, we've got to talk about the North Pole.
Yes.
I mean, the film's depiction of Santa's workshop is just breathtaking.
Sure.
It's this magical, whimsical world that feels both familiar and fresh at the same time.
It's a visual feast. The elves are adorable, toys are incredible, and there's this sense of energy and excitement that just radiates from every corner of the screen.
And the way they introduce the True Believers book.
Yes.
It's this ancient magical tome that keeps track of everyone who still believes in Santa.
It's a great narrative device. It adds a layer of mystery and intrigue to the whole story.
It made me wonder if there really is a True Believers book out there somewhere, keeping track of all the good people in the world.
Right.
But it's not all fun and games at the North Pole,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
There's a sense of urgency, a ticking clock as they're racing to get Santa back on track and save Christmas.
Exactly. The stakes are high. The film reminds us that, Christmas spirit isn't just about presents and decorations. It's a vital force that keeps the world from falling into darkness.
Okay, so we've got Santa back in action. The elves are working their magic. The sleigh is ready to go.
Yeah.
But what about Teddy's wish to
Okay.
connect with his dad?
Yeah.
How does that play out?
Well, that's where the thing really gets emotional. Teddy's journey is about more than just believing in Santa. It's about coming to terms with his grief and finding a way to honor his father's memory. And the film delivers a really heartwarming resolution.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
All right, but you'll have to wait for part 3. We got to leave some surprises for the big finale.
So last we left off, Santa's back in action thanks to the elves. The sleigh is prepped for a global present run, and Teddy's still hoping for that connection with his dad.
Right. So what follows is just pure Christmas magic in overdrive. We see Santa and the kids zipping across the globe, dropping off those presents with pinpoint accuracy. The visual effects in these scenes are just stunning. They really capture the speed and scale of Santa's journey.
I can only imagine. Did it feel like overly CGI, or did they
Yeah.
manage to ground it in some sort of reality?
I think they found a really nice balance. There's definitely CGI, especially with the flying sleigh and the elves, but it never feels overwhelming or distracting. The focus really remains on the characters and their emotional journeys, and the special effects enhance those stories rather than overshadow them.
That's good to hear. I'm always a little wary of holiday movies that lean too heavily into CGI.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like they're trying to distract you from a lack of substance, you know?
Right.
But it sounds like they used it effectively here.
Yeah, I think so. It really adds to the overall sense of wonder and excitement. It's like watching a Christmas storybook come to life on screen.
Okay, so we've got the presents being delivered, but what about Teddy?
Right.
You mentioned a heartwarming resolution to his story.
Yes. So remember that magical ornament that Teddy found earlier? The one that belonged to his dad?
Uh-huh.
Well, it turns out that ornament holds a very special kind of Christmas magic. And through a series of events, Teddy actually gets to use that ornament to connect with his father's spirit.
Wow, that's incredible. Was it handled in a way that felt authentic and not too cheesy?
Absolutely. It's a beautifully understated scene. No grand pronouncements or dramatic gestures. It's just this quiet moment of connection between a father and a son, just filled with love and understanding. You really feel Teddy's grief and his longing, but also this sense of peace and acceptance.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to the film's ability to handle these kind of heavier themes with sensitivity and grace. It's not just a fun Christmas adventure. It's a story about healing and finding hope, even in the darkest of times.
Exactly. And that message is reinforced through the Pierce family's reconciliation at the end. They come together, they share their love for each other, and they realize that even though their father is gone, his spirit lives on in their hearts.
Okay, but we can't wrap up our deep dive without talking about Goldie Hawn.
Oh, yes.
She appears as Mrs. Claus, right?
She does. And even though it's a smaller role, her presence is just delightful. She brings such warmth and mischievous energy to Mrs. Claus, and her chemistry with Kurt Russell is just undeniable. I mean, they're a real-life couple,
Oh, that's right.
And that genuine affection just shines through on screen.
It's like they're bringing a little bit of their own holiday magic to the
Yeah,
film.
exactly.
Did you have any other favorite moments or details that kind of stood out to you?
Oh, there are so many. I loved all the little nods to classic Christmas movies that they kind of sprinkled throughout.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, the scene where Santa gets chased by the police on foot, for example,
Yeah,
that felt like a direct homage to the chase scene in Miracle on 34th Street.
I see that.
And just the overall tone of the film,
Yeah.
that blend of humor and adventure and heart, it reminded me a lot of Home Alone.
Yeah, another Christmas classic.
Exactly, one that appeals to both kids and adults.
I see what you mean.
Yeah,
It's definitely got that, like, timeless Christmas movie quality to it.
for sure.
Speaking of quality, I want to talk about the director Clay Kaitis.
Yes.
He comes from, like, an animation background, right?
He does, yeah. He worked on films like Tangled and Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh, wow.
And you can definitely see that influence in the Christmas Chronicles.
How so?
Well, the North Pole scenes especially have this vibrant, whimsical feel that's reminiscent of classic animated films.
That makes sense. I could definitely see how his animation experience would lend itself to creating these fantastical environments and characters.
Mhm.
But what I find really interesting is that he managed to blend those animated elements with the live-action performances so seamlessly.
Right.
It never feels jarring or out of place.
It's a testament to his skill as a director. He created this world that feels both magical and grounded, which allows the actors to really shine.
Okay, so wrapping things up here, what are your final thoughts on The Christmas Chronicles?
Hmm.
Why should people watch it, and what makes it stand out from all the other holiday films out there?
I think The Christmas Chronicles is a must-watch for anyone who loves a good Christmas movie. It's got everything you could want: humor, adventure, heart, and a healthy dose of Christmas magic. But what sets it apart is its willingness to go beyond those typical holiday tropes.
Yeah.
It's a film that's not afraid to explore these more complex themes like grief and belief, and it does so with a sincerity and a depth that's really rare to find in a family-friendly film.
I couldn't agree more. It's a film that really stays with you long after the credits roll, and it reminds us of the true meaning of Christmas, the importance of family, the power of belief, and that enduring magic of the season.
Well said.
All right, well, that wraps up our deep dive into The Christmas Chronicles. What did you think of the film? Do you believe in Santa? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of movies. See you next time.